All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for spending your Friday here. I hope you guys are already learning a lot of stuff. Come on in, have a seat. So today what I'm going to talk to you about is something called the customer value journey. This is something that was introduced to me a little about a year ago, and it has actually taken me about a year to really fully understand. So what I'd like you all to take away today is when I start explaining what it is, I want you to start thinking about what you're doing in your marketing already, and you're going to start to understand the gaps and the sequencing errors that you might have or the things that you might be missing in your marketing. Come on in, there's still seats. All right, so I know you're all wondering who is this guy talking, right? You want to know who I am. I am a former graphic designer. Actually, I went to Morris County School of Technology, which I think has got to be somewhere around here, right? It's in Denville, right? From there, I went to film school. I worked in film production for a number of years. I worked on everything from TV shows, feature films, TV shows, I said that already, commercials. I went storm chasing with Discovery Channel, which was really cool. I'm also a black belt. I taught martial arts for a number of years. Most importantly, I'm a husband and father, and that's about it. You guys don't really care about me, but now we know each other, right? So, cool. So in business, we know each other as two different directions, right? You're either going to be business to business or you're business to consumer. And it looks like PowerPoint kind of messed up my slides, the font issues over here. So that's a little Easter egg for you. How's that? So business to business. Who's in business to business here? Yep, a couple. And then business to consumer or business to customer. It's the same kind of thing, right? So my perspective on this is I think this is the wrong way of looking at it, because everything that we do in life all revolves around humans, because we are, after all, humans, right? You're not selling to elephants or gazelles, and we haven't found extraterrestrial life forms yet, so we can't sell interplanetary. Maybe one day we will, and I hope that I can become an interplanetary brand. But if you really understand humans and how humans interact with one another, then you're going to be able to really craft a marketing plan that will reach those people. And I don't know why, someone's calling me right now. So come on in. There's seats over here.
Thanks. I'll sit in the front row.
Excellent. So I mentioned that everything is based on relationships, right? If you think about how you've established relationships with people in your life, whether it's your family or business or neighbors or whatever it is, right? There's a sequence of events that have had to happen in order for you to actually have that relationship. Now, before I get any further, I just want to kind of give you guys a little warning and a disclaimer that what I'm going to teach you is probably going to change the way you look at marketing and look at your business moving forward, because I know that's what it did to me. And I know that everybody that comes in contact with the customer value journey, it really helps you understand the differences of what your business really is and helps you identify, oh, I'm missing a step or I'm doing something out of sequence. And I'm going to get into that in a second so it'll make a little more sense. But you're going to see things very differently, and you're going to see this all over the place, because what I'm talking about today is not specific to any particular industry. It works across the board. Industry agnostic is what I call it, because it's a process that's driven primarily around human intimacy. That's the science that this is all based on. So there is a book called Intimate Behavior by a guy named Desmond Morris. Desmond Morris was a zoologist, and he studied primates. And what happened was I'm not sure if he was commissioned to do it or if he just started doing it on his own, but he started researching humans and human intimacy. Because if you think about it, when you meet somebody for the very first time and then you get married and have kids, it's a weird process that has to happen in between for you to actually get to know that person, right? So relationships, that's what I mentioned. So my relationship with my wife is very different than a relationship with a business associate or my neighbor, right? So what Desmond Morris determined was there's 12 different steps of human intimacy. It starts with eye-to-eye contact and hand-to-hand. You shake your hand, then maybe put my hand on your shoulder, right? But you can't just walk up to somebody and put your hand on their face. You can't just walk up to somebody and grab them, right? Because that's assault, right? So we've all been in a situation where you're buying something and you have the salesman that's like really, hammering down what you want, what they want you to buy. And you're kind of like, you're not really sure if you want to buy it or not. And then you leave, like buying whatever it is they're selling, and you feel like you were assaulted. Anybody ever have that happen?
Yes.
Yes. That's because they skipped steps. So what Desmond Morris figured out in the 12 stages of human intimacy, that if you rearrange the order in any different way, it's a 90% failure rate. Think about that. You can't just propose marriage on the first date. It's not going to work. But what's actually kind of funny is you can. And what's actually funny is, well, what's actually funny is I gave this presentation to another group, and in conversation, one of the guys told me, he's like, Jay, I actually did that in college. That was my pickup line. I would walk up to women and just say, hey, you want to get married? And I'm like, well, how did that work out? And he goes, well, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. And I'm like, but you're single, so obviously it didn't work. But the point of what I'm saying is, too many people go up to their customer and say, hey, come buy my stuff. I have this, right? You go to a lot of networking events, and everybody gets up and says, hi, I'm Jason. I own Contrast Logic. I run marketing, and I want to fix your marketing. Come buy my stuff, right? There's nothing of substance to what I just said. There's nothing that's going to make you interested in what I have to say, right? And it's just, I'm proposing marriage on the first date and trying to get you to buy something right away without establishing a relationship, right? So, human intimacy has 12 stages. The customer value journey has 8. So there are 8 stages of business intimacy. And this is what it looks like, right? The customer value journey. It is how you go from unaware prospects that don't know who you are, they are unfamiliar with your brand, and they turn into promoters and advocates. They turn into your marketing department, right? My best example of this is CrossFit. Anybody ever hear of CrossFit? What's the one thing you know about somebody if they do CrossFit?
Talk about it.
They talk about it, right? That's the thing. They are in the promote stage of CrossFit because they've been so immersed in that culture and what's going on that they believe it in themselves. So when you have a customer that believes in your brand, they're going to go and tell everybody else about it. That's the difference between people that like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, right? Or the reason why you only buy Audi versus buying BMW, because you're an Audi guy, right? So there's differences, and how you build that relationship is this. It's all mapped out on the customer value journey, all right? And I'm going to go through these stages and I'm going to explain what it's all about. But remember, it's all about building a relationship with your customer, because after all, your customer is a human, and you want to build that relationship, build that trust factor. Just like, you build trust factor with a friend or a colleague or a love interest, you have to build the trust, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. So we start down here in the bottom left corner in the aware stage. This is where your prospect is seeing an ad, or they find you in search, or maybe they come to an event and they see you speak, right? Up until today, you guys didn't even know who I was, right? But now you are familiar with who I am, because right now you're in the aware stage and you're becoming aware of what I have to say. You're becoming aware of what's going on. Is that working?
All right, I'm an Orange Theory person.
Okay. That's quite all right. So this is the aware stage. This is social media, right? This is where people are seeing your posts, they're seeing your ads, right? They're coming in contact with your brand for the very first time. So I want you to think about what you're doing in your marketing right now. That is that initial touch point, because you heard it said earlier today that it takes a couple of touch points before somebody actually makes a decision to buy from you. Now, I'm sure you've heard it takes 7 touch points. I think it's more like 100 actually, right? It takes a lot. And that could even just be brand awareness, seeing a logo somewhere, okay? After the awareness stage, the next stage is the engage stage. This is where a glance, right? They're seeing you for the first time. becomes a stare. Now they're staring at you because now they're interested, right? This is where you want to engage your customer in a conversation. You open up that conversation loop, right? Maybe this is where they start reading more content on your website. They visit a blog post, and then on your website you have related blog articles, and they click on that and they go to another page and they're reading more of your content. Maybe they're watching your videos, they're going through your social media and they're commenting on stuff and they're engaging with what you have to say. They're facilitating this relationship, this conversation, right? So think about what you're doing in your marketing that you're getting people's attention and you're starting a conversation with them. So social media takes up essentially these two bottom boxes right here, okay? Now, in the dating analogy, right, you have I see you from across the room, and I walk up to you and I start engaging in a conversation, asking questions. Now the next stage is I want to take that relationship to the next level. Hey, can I get your phone number? Right? That's a very easy ask, right? If you're building a relationship with a love interest, that's the next logical step. In the business stage, in the marketing stage, what you want to try and do is get your customer to opt into some kind of gated content that you have. Now, gated content, all that means is you go to a page and there's a little form and you put your email address in and you hit the button and then they give you whatever the content is, the white paper or resource guide. We call them lead magnets because they track the leads to you. But this stage is super important because you're gaining their contact information. This is where you're able to follow up with them. This is where you start the conversation, now you're facilitating the conversation. You're keeping it moving, right? So this is where you end up in their inbox on a regular basis. Now you're sending them a newsletter, or you're sending them email updates, or whatever it is. You have their contact information. Now you own it, right? The difference with this, right? I'm going to go a little off topic for a second, but when you have contact information, you have a list of people, you have an email list. You can take the email list and go to any different software. You can go to MailChimp, you can go to Constant Contact, you can go to ActiveCampaign. It doesn't matter. You own that list. That's yours. It's a spreadsheet. Names, phone numbers, email addresses. That's it. But if you have, say, 1 million followers on Facebook, or 1 million followers on YouTube, or 1 million followers on LinkedIn or Instagram, guess who owns that audience? Facebook owns that audience. LinkedIn owns that audience. YouTube they own that audience. And what happens if they don't like your content? You lose that audience instantly. So too many people put too much emphasis on building their followers, but if they don't like what you're doing, you lose that entire, And if that's your only revenue stream, you're going to be SOL. So, subscribe stage. Make sure you have some kind of content. Now so what I mean by gated content, I mentioned white papers or resource guides, or I call them lead magnets. What you want to do is you want to answer a specific question for a specific target audience. Now, this whole process right here is driven based on one target audience. Okay, so you might serve, for example, chiropractors and dentists if you're in business to business. Now, a chiropractor would go through this very differently than a dentist. Now, they might meet somewhere in the middle, and it might kind of have this cohesive middle ground, but they might enter the journey in a different way. Okay? So you want to keep in mind who your audience is at all times, what's the burning questions they're asking, and how are you going to solve that question. Now, this is a Band-Aid right here, the subscribe stage. It's not the full solution, right? The next stage after the subscribe stage is the convert stage. This is where you are now taking the relationship up another notch, and you are getting them to commit their time or their money. Okay? And what I mean by that is you're either getting them to come into a meeting, right? Spend 45 minutes, or you're getting them to buy a low-ticket item, something that's easy for them to just take their money out and hand it over, okay? In the dating analogy, this is, hey, do you want to come get a cup of coffee with me? It's not, do you want to get married? And it's not, do you want to go to dinner? Do you want to go on date night? It's a very small commitment because it's a psychological trigger getting them to commit their time or commit their money. Because if they give you the money now, they're more likely to give you more money later. And if they want to spend time with you today, they're probably going to want to spend more time with you later because they're going to find you interesting. So this is another stage that a lot of people kind of forget. They think about just going straight to a core offer and, again, buy my stuff, but make it easier for them. Make the commitment a little bit less of a commitment. So this way you're just furthering the relationship.
So Jason, what price point are you talking about there?
So if your core offer, if the main thing that you're selling, let's just say is $200, your convert stage right here should be under 20 bucks. Right? If your core offer is $2,000, then your convert stage could be 200 bucks, right? So we call this either an entry point offer or a tripwire. We call it tripwire because in warfare they set up the tripwire line with the claymores, and if you tripped over it, an explosion happens, and you're able to see where your enemy is in the battlefield. Right here, if they buy this, you can see where your customers are, and you see what they're looking for. So that's the important part. Yes? Coupons could be in this area. Coupons could also be in the subscribe stage. Okay. So so here's the other thing about this is you have to provide the next logical step in this journey at all times. Otherwise, it's bad customer experience. Right? So if left to their own devices, your customers are going to take this journey on their own, and they're going to fall off somewhere along the way. Right? You need to guide them along the way. This is a journey. It's a movie. Think about movies, right? Your customer is the hero. You are the guide. You're the one that's facilitating them going through what they're doing. There's a box in the way over here. Oh well. Anyway. So after you get them to commit some time or money, the next logical step is you have to get them excited about what they just bought, right? Case in point, I have a client of mine who sells skin. Skin. Yeah, fascinating, right? But the problem that he was telling me, he's like, I asked him what his retention rate is on stuff, and he said, well, I have one doctor that just is so mad, they're frustrated with it. I'm like, well, why? He's like, he didn't know how to use it. Like, well, did you teach him how to use it? Did you onboard them? Did you give them instructions on what to do? And he goes, no. Well, there's your reason why your customer was frustrated, because he didn't know how to use the product. So in this stage, once they commit their time or money and they're actually furthering this relationship, give them an opportunity to get excited about what they just bought and onboard them. Yes?
I'm sorry, but I didn't quite get the getting them to give you money.
Mm-hmm.
If you're selling a car, because I sell a similar product, how do you get
It's not always money.
Okay.
It's either time or money. So for you, it might be an event.
Okay.
Wine and cars. All right, that doesn't really mesh together, right? But if you have an event, like for example, if I were a dental office, I could do a wine and cheese night. And then you invite people to the event. They come for the wine and cheese. They hang around. You give a little presentation, right? You could do a webinar.
I get it.
Yeah. So time or money, get them really excited about what they bought so they see the value in the transaction. And then the next step is your core offer. That's what you're trying to sell, your flagship product, your main thing, the one thing that you want them to buy the most. This is it right here. The problem with marketing today is too many people try and go from, hey, I see you, to, hey, come buy my stuff. They skip this step, but there's no arrow over here. There's no way to get there. But if you further this relationship, you're building the authority and building the trust that to the point when they get to this step right here, they're going to want to buy more stuff because they like what you have to say and they like what you have. And they're learning about your brand, right? You're earning their trust, right? So at this point, it's not about how much money can I squeeze out of my customer. It's how much more value can I add. So your core offer is, like I said, it's the one thing that you're proud to sell. Then you want to think about what are the upsells? What are the next logical steps? What are the bundle offers? What are the cross products, right? If you're selling cars, it might be a car wash. It might be a car wash program, right? It's different things that are, that just make whatever they just bought a little bit nicer, a little bit easier, okay? Now, at this point, what this is also doing, it's called a profit maximizer. Because at this point in your marketing, you spent money to acquire these customers, right? Maybe you spent money on advertising or trade shows or something like that. So whatever you bought, if they bought something of monetary value in the convert stage, you're not making any money off of it. You're not going to get rich. You might not even break even at this point. But by the time you hit your core offer, you want to break even with your marketing, right? All of your marketing efforts, everything you've spent money on, at that point you should be breaking even to the point where these upsells and the bundle offers are just profit maximizing. We call them slack adjusters because it's just pulling in that slack and making it so much more valuable for you. And then by that time, the next stage, you have a happy customer because they're excited about your brand and they're passively talking about it to people. They're passively going around on social media and talking about it. And they want to talk about it. You just have to kind of give them a little reason to do that. This is where you want to get testimonials or case studies because they're excited about what you have, and they want to tell other people. And if you can incentivize them a little bit, maybe creating a loyalty program or a referral program, then those people become your biggest believers, and they become the promoters for you. So then they're going to actively go out and say, hey, come check this guy out. This is really cool stuff. It's like CrossFit. Hey, you got to come to CrossFit. Come on. You got to see I just put 100 pounds over my head, and you got to come check it out. Like, it's awesome, right? That's a promotion. So, customer value journey, this is it in all of its glory. 8 stages of business intimacy. Take a picture of this. I have printouts that you guys can have. And start thinking about what you're doing in your marketing that you have in place and where your sequencing errors might be. Are you skipping any stages? Are you trying to go from aware to your core offer? Are you getting them excited? Do you have some kind of list that you're getting them on?
I have a question about the subscribe stage. So you had mentioned pretty interesting information in regards to the social media platforms where, hey, they like, comment, whatever. We don't really own that. But what we do own maybe is when they go to engage on our website and fill out some sort of list. Is there some sort of psychology or a way to get more people to go to that? I find that people are more likely to, like and, kind of like the hidden, oh, I don't want to let her know.
Yeah, it depends on the content that you're putting out there. That's the biggest thing. If you're putting out interesting things, then people are going to want to comment on it. But again, here's the other side of it. It depends on the business too, because, let's just say.
Like that they're more in the social media side. I find people are less. Their psychology is if I go there, I'm going to have to buy something. So they're in maybe an afraid or scared mode to do that.
Yeah.
Even though the same content is on my website that I offer out on I post, a blog post, and I then send that to my social media site. That's where I'm engaging with them.
Right.
But I want them to come back to that, and
Yeah.
that's where my barrier is.
Okay. Yeah. So you just have to really understand who your audience is and understand the type of content that they want to consume, and then create that content, and then you put it out there.
Consume it, but they're consuming it on the social media side.
Yeah.
Do I offer it too much over there? Is that what I'm doing?
I don't know. Is the answer, because I don't know too much about what your business is. But yeah, so you have to, somebody spoke earlier about having goals in mind when you're marketing. Like, you have to have a goal. And if your goal is to build up social media following, then that's one thing. But if your goal is to get them to come to your website, to maybe subscribe to something, then maybe you want to rethink the strategy that your content strategy for social media.
Okay, great, thank you.
Welcome.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, I get to convert. If your core offer is a substantial purchase, and there is no minor purchase in the convert, that could just be a meeting. But what is the in-between stage? Like, if you have
The excite stage?
Yeah, there is no minor purchase on the convert.
Well, you said this would be a meeting, right?
So that's a meeting.
What happens during the meeting?
Well, you discuss what your offer is.
And then what happens after, and then what's the next logical step after that meeting? They have to buy something, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you can send them case study. You can send them testimonials. Get them excited about what they're going to buy, so therefore you're pre-framing that sale, so it's just easier for them. This whole thing right here is all about just giving them the path of least resistance. You want to make it easy for them to go through this journey. Yes?
Added to that, there's been times where, I'll have a meeting with someone, we have things in common, and I'm sending them information about that stuff.
Yes.
Which leads to another meeting, which could get to a core.
Yeah.
Sure, exciting them about the relationship rather than the
Right.
product.
Exactly. It goes either way. Like exactly what you're saying. Like this could be like, hey, did you see the Mets just won whatever it is? Like,
I
you know,
never
if you're
realized you were so excited about sports. I never realized we got along with sports so much. Oh,
Yeah.
we should go catch another
It
game.
doesn't
But,
matter, they're not in
you
the
know.
playoffs.
poor Mets.
I just have
I thought we
another
said
question
Jay.
about
Sure.
Would you say there's a time element between the convert and
Very good. Very, very good question. So there is, believe it or not, no actual time frame for this journey to happen. Right? Just like in human intimacy, you could go through all 12 stages in really quick time, or it could take 10 years, or you may only get a certain way. This journey, if you do it, specific, it depends on the business and stuff too, but you could very easily drive a customer all the way through this entire journey pretty quickly, right? So there is no real time frame, because it can happen. They see your stuff on social media, they click a link, they read a blog article, they download your lead magnet, which is 5 top tips for whatever it is, then they watch a webinar, and then they get an email, and it's like, hey, you just watched a webinar, why don't you go buy this thing? And they get the email, they click on it, like, oh, I gotta buy this thing, they buy it, and then there's upsell, 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 and then afterwards they're like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Done. That happened in like, what, 2 minutes, 30 seconds, right? So, really quick, I know you guys have learned a lot of stuff today, and there's a lot of really good speakers, a lot of really good content. The biggest thing that you have to take away is action, right? So this is, right? It's funny. This is everybody here, right? Everybody here has you're here for a reason, right? You want to learn something. Whatever it is, your desires, your goals are right here, right? Whether it's a bigger business or more customers, whatever your desire is on that side. And in between is this big chasm or crevasse, whatever you want to call it. And you have to get to the other side. So everything you're going to learn is going to build a bridge. But the problem is you start building these bridges and then you get, okay, well, I get stuck. And then you think of something else somebody else said and you're like, oh, I'm going to do that. And then you hear another tactic or another strategy, and you're like, I'm going to do that, right? And then before you realize it, you just have a whole bunch of half-built bridges, and you're still not anywhere you need to be. So if you take anything away from what I said today, think about everything you're learning today in as far as all the marketing stuff, and pick one path. Pick just one thing. Maybe it's the excite stage. Maybe you realize you're missing the excite stage. Go home, write an email, and implement it. Just do one thing, because what happens is, once you do one thing, the rest follow. And then what happens? Right?